A hex map's main job is to make your life as the DM easier. You may think of it as a really daunting task, but I'm here to tell you that it's actually just a bunch of small steps, and each step is fun and easy, and when you've done all the steps, you will have created a map. Even if you're not an artist, it's going to be okay, because you're just working with hexes and hex icons, and by the end of it you will have spit out something that looks good. But if you are an artist, this also works. My map on my wall looks really nice, but the hex map is the utility layered on top. Let's go populate a hex map. Welcome to Mystic Arts, and today I'm wearing my summer shirt because summer has finally arrived in Iceland. Thank God. My name is Daði, I'm a professional writer and director, and I've been DMing for 10 years. In this short Tuesday episode, we're at my desk and we're going to make a hex map together. And ultimately, the principles of a hex map come down to the power of outlining. Think of it like this. Writing a book is hard. In fact, just sitting down and writing a book is basically impossible. But what's not impossible is sitting down and writing a bullet point list of scenes you want to do. In fact, that's way easier. You just write down every scene idea you have, then you can take that bullet list and sort it in order, and eventually you will have some shape of a thing you like, right? Then you go into each bullet point and you expand and expand and expand. A hex map is the same. You create a broad overall map, you split it into areas, areas into places, and each place eventually becomes a dungeon or an adventure location of some kind. You think of outlining as basically sitting down and thinking, I can't go make a whole book or hex map today, but what can I do? And then you do as much of that as you can, right? To be clear, the advice here isn't just get started. The advice is think of the most you can do in one sitting and do that. Once you get into that process, that mindset, you will quickly be able to start making things fast. And okay, if you put on your hex map 50 dungeons, you have to go make 50 dungeons? No, you only need to make the dungeon when the players get to it. Up until that point, you just need to know kind of roughly a little what the dungeon is about. Enough that if they go learn something, you can answer a question about it, but maybe just a one question. And then slowly, as they continue to explore the hex map, you generate the details as they go along, using the hex map as your guide, as your founding principle. For this video, in our running example, I'll be using Photoshop, but you absolutely do not need Photoshop. In fact, if you scroll down to the comments, I'm sure you'll find loads of people telling you exactly what sort of hex mapping software or online tool or something you can use, probably for free, some with a subscription fee or whatever, and you can go check them out and see what you like and then use those. You can also print out this hex grid and just fill it in by hand. I love doing stuff by hand and pen and paper. The only reason it's digital is because it's easier for me to make a video about it. That's it. And we start off with an empty hex grid. That's going to seem kind of daunting, right? You cannot sit down and just make a book, right? So here we are. We've got an empty hex grid. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to start by defining our landscape. I've got this mountain brush stamp tool I'm going to use, and I'm just going to use it to create this mountain range. And I click along, go and click, 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 click here, just putting down a mountain range. Now remember, this map's job isn't to be pretty, it's to be useful. I'll show you a little bit on how to make a pretty map later in the video. We're going to try and remember that a mountain range in hexes shouldn't be just one line. It should be little nooks and crannies and so on, right? For the purposes of this video, I'm assuming that each hex is 3 miles. If you want to know why I decide each hex is 3 miles, go check out our video on making hex maps be 3 miles. I'll put a link in the description. I'll put a little hole here in the mountain range, right? Mountain in this case doesn't mean impassable, it just means that it takes a long time to go through. Make a little extra mountain range here, and now we've got some kind of range, right? Now you may look at this and think, that looks pretty nice. I don't. You could make things that are a lot prettier than this if you spend some time on it, but right now I'm just quickly jotting this down so you can see kind of what I'm getting at. Step 1, landscape. Mountains are not a landscape, so let's add a few more. I'm gonna add these hills around, just because to me that indicates that the terrain slopes down, right? We start with the mountains, then the hills, right? We're working our way from top to bottom. Now, I could shuffle through and use a whole bunch of different brushes and make it, pretty, but right now I'm just showing you how I would do this at a quick drop of a hat, right? Because it is actually easy and fun to make a hex map. Fancy hex mapping software online makes each hex have a different color so that you can tell easier at a glance what each hex is. I think that's very clever. I'm not doing that. I'll then go grab a tree, and put a bunch of trees down. These are forested hexes, right? Now, I didn't have a plan when I started. I just sort of started. That's the beauty of doing things in steps. You don't need to know exactly what it is you're drawing. You just start by going, where are the mountains? Based on the mountains, where are the hills? Based on the hills, where are the trees? Now you could go and have extra complicated, have a tree hill hex and stuff like that. That exists if you're playing like Civilization. I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to go and put a bunch of trees down. Now the reason you're running a hex crawl is probably because there is some uncharted wilderness in your world and you want to gamify the exploration of the wilderness. That means, by the way, that your map would probably benefit from pointing out where the civilization is. So we're going to assume that everything here is a wild wilderness, you know, no good, bad time, except for the bit that we're going to designate a civilization. I'm going to put a town into this valley we made. I'm now going to grab a sort of grassy, you know, little brush just to tell myself that these hexes are left deliberately empty. And there we go. Now let's put a river on here. If there is civilization, that's probably because they have water. So we're going to assume that there's a river. I'm just going to draw the river as an intersecting line here that only exists not on the hexes. Now, that sucked, so I'm going to do it again. I'm going to use the smoothing brush so that it sort of smooths a little bit. Now, by committing ourselves to not drawing it in hexes, we kind of force it to have a river-like shape, which is a lot of fun. Here we go. There's a river. Now, if you did this with color, it would be prettier. Like, no doubt about it. But I kind of like this aesthetic, so I'm going to stick to it. All right, landscapes. That looks pretty good. I'm now going to go in and I'm going to put on our town. I think our town is right here. Now at this point, we're going to try and make our job even easier. How do we start? By putting in dungeons? Oh god, that's a big question, right? So instead, we're not gonna. We are going to make factions. I think this is just based on my setting and what I'm feeling like I want to run at the moment. I think this is probably sort of Wild West outback in the mountains. So I'm going to assume that I'm going to need to think of factions related to that. Here in Photoshop, I'm just making some low opacity layers real quick, but basically I'm going to draw a little shape here for red, and I'm going to make the opacity low. And I'm only doing this for illustrative purposes for you. If you're doing this by hand or something, you don't need to do this. You can just sort of, you know, think about it. But here we go. Red, this is civilized area, right? This is where the settlers are. Now this valley here, I think probably belongs to another faction. There's a whole valley here. What's in it? I don't know. We don't know yet. Got an idea, but we'll get to it. And this way, on the other side of these mountains, I think there's a bigger faction. But they don't go over the hills, right? Then I think there's an extra scary faction up in the mountains, and a less scary faction out in those hills. And then I decide, okay, blue faction, let's say that's hill giants. Yellow faction, the mountain people. There are goblinoids in the forest, and there are bandits in the purple area, right? What I then do is I decide where each of their base is. I've already put the town here, so let's put the other bases. I'll grab an icon that to me means bad guy base, and I'll maybe zoom in a bit, and I'll say, okay, the hill giants are, let's say they're tucked away here in this hex. I'll erase the tree, and I'll just put a little icon. And we know that the bandits are in here somewhere. Let's erase one of these icons and put a little bandit camp in here, right? And these are the hobgoblins and goblins and bugbears. Let's put a little icon in there. And the mountain people, they're tucked away in the mountains here in a little valley. Bam. Now, each faction has a base of operations. At this point, you've sort of got an idea of roughly where things are. And the borders that we drew in color here are just kind of their area of influence. And we're going to make them even thinner. We don't really need them. So quickly, we're going to do some outposts. In Dungeons & Dragons terms, these are dungeons. So I think the mountain people have an outpost pretty close. I need to lock this layer. Pretty close. I think they're up here, right? That's an outpost, right? Smaller than the base. That's the only reason I picked that icon. I think the hill giants, they have an outpost all the way down here. These bandits, they've got they could have a lookout post somewhere here by the river. Let's put them into this hill cluster. And goblinoids, I think, have 3 outposts. There, and there. Now again, I could make those hexes have a tree and the base in it, but I like the idea of it being in a clearing or whatever, so that when the players get there, the hex doesn't take as much time. This goes back to the hexcrawl mechanics that I was talking about in the last video, and if you want to get access to those hexcrawl mechanics, go check out our Patreon. But basically, the idea is that a forest hex takes long to walk through, whereas an unforested hex takes less time. If the characters end their turn in a hex after having marched for 8 hours, and they know all it takes is another 2 hours to go enter the next hex, they might want to push for the next 2 hours and get that sort of benefit of doing this thing in this one day. If they roll, though, they might get exhaustion. So this is a part of the gameplay mechanic. Is it benefits gameplay if the hex isn't also forested, because then players are more likely to want to push into it. Now we've got plenty of dungeons on this map. It's actually quite a lot of them. What you can then do is you can do a little bit of crossover. So I'm going to do a different icon just to tell myself this is crossover. But basically, crossovers are when you have one faction's outpost in another faction's area. So they're doing their own adventuring. They're going out of their area into the next area to try and get something done, right? So for instance, maybe the hobgoblins are looking into this base over here, right? Or maybe the mountain tribe has this hidden little base out here, or they're looking into something, or they're researching. Maybe it used to be a goblin outpost, but the mountain people now are trying to steal something or research some of their material or something like that. So now it's a crossover outpost, right? Does that make sense? You can also include side content. So let's say inside the civilized area here where the settlers are, we're going to erase one of these and we're going to put a little tower. This tower is just its own side content. Maybe there is a particular monster in the monster manual or a set of monsters you haven't used. You're really excited about jackal wares. Well, you make a little jackal ware dungeon, you put it here, right? It doesn't tie into any of the other factions. It's a small faction. It's tiny, so it doesn't have a lot of area, but it's contained in one location, right? Put them there. I'll put another one. That's too close. I'll put another one maybe like out here, and let's erase one of these mountains. There we go. Bit of extra side content, and then for bonus points, you go grab a little flag, and you make landmarks. You know, this hex here has a weird thing in it. I don't know what that weird thing is yet. We don't need to worry. We're just gonna, mostly right now, we're playing Minesweeper. We're trying to look for empty blobs and put something in them. Look at this big empty area. Well, there should be a fun selection of landmarks in here. Just so that when you're traveling, you're likely to spot something fun. That's roughly what we're talking about. You know, if I go from here to here, it's okay if the players don't see anything exciting for a bit. That's fine. The hexes are small, so we're allowed to have them be empty because they're traveling through a lot of them. But you can also decide to erase this hill, put a fun landmark here. And now if they go this route, they might see this landmark before they see this tower. And now there's a choice. I thought the tower was this way. Maybe it is that thing over there. You know what I mean? We'll fill in a couple more of these gaps. You don't need to fill every hex. In fact, I think filling every hex is probably a trap. Because what happens is, if you're filling every hex, you've also lost the gameplay. The gameplay of, do we enter the hex? Which way are we going? We see all adjacent hexes. So like a journey that starts in town and finds its way up here and up here and up here. You still haven't seen anything, but then you go here and you see this because you've got this area of sight. So you're actually exploring as you walk in this way. You are also exploring all of these hexes, right? Same with if they're going from the town to this base, they might go down here, then they might walk for a bit, right? And then, oh, we haven't seen, oh, what is this? Okay, let's go up. Oh, what's this? Okay, it's supposed to be in this direction, and then, oh, here it is. You know what I mean? So as they're navigating around, they see their surroundings. They are aware of their surroundings. Remember the video we just did. Obviously, what we want to start doing is start naming all these places. This cowboy town, we're going to call Rattlesnake Ridge. It's the wrong font. We put Rattlesnake Ridge on here, right? And we know that this is the base of the hobgoblins. We're going to call it the Red Keep, reference to Red Hand of Doom. And, you know, this is the mountain tribe. We're going to call their area Utopia, right? And you name all of these icons, right? And that's going to take you some time. That's where a lot of the work comes in, because when you name something, you also kind of give it the meaning, right? This landmark, we're going to call it Broken Statue. Suddenly, you've already know a bunch about the statue. Who's the statue of? Where is it from? Is it a hobgoblin statue or a settler statue? You start asking yourself these questions, and that's when you have this sort of explosive creativity moment. You base your answers on the facts you built so far. It's the power of outlining. Your Rattlesnake Ridge, that's the settlers. Your hobgoblins, they're over here. So this statue in between the two of them, which side built it? Or maybe neither. Maybe it's a hill giant statue. And the hill giants made a statue at some point. Seems weird for a hill giant, but okay. They made a statue at some point, and now, on their journey from Rattlesnake Ridge to the Red Keep, they see this broken hill giant statue, and they go, where are hill giants? Are they in here somewhere? And you're seeding the world. Everything you go through in a hexcrawl, every place you enter, every area you go to, it should be elevating the sort of exploration method. Exploration is discovery. So you discover a broken hill giant statue, and now you're thinking, where are the hill giants? And now there's this exciting question. Where can we find them? Later on, they might find a map of a valley, and it says Hill Giant Home. Map made by somebody else. It didn't know the name of the home, but we're going to name the Hill Giant Home. In my setting, Hill Giants speak Icelandic, so I'm going to call their home Heima, which is just Icelandic for home, because that's what the Hill Giants would call it. And then they see that valley, and they're like, hang on, but this is roughly where Rattlesnake Ridge is, but that doesn't make any sense. There are no Hill Giants in Rattlesnake Ridge. but there's another valley on the other side. Let's go cross the mountains to see if we can find it. And now they're having this exploration moment. They're venturing based on a guess, based on a clue, but they're venturing into the unknown, and they might find what they're looking for. You follow? As you layer each detail out, as you go to each area, you name it something, suddenly the map starts speaking to you. You start to get to know the map. And now you're thinking, oh, you know, we might have to go to the hill giant thing. I have to go make a hill giant dungeon right now. Only when the players are getting there. From their journey from Rattlesnake Ridge to Hema, they're going to enter several hexes. You throw a random encounter at them or two, right? And then, as they're getting closer to the home, you realize you have to go build out that dungeon. Also, building out a dungeon like this, if you're good at map foo, if you're practicing your 5-room dungeons, you can actually just do it. You can just start a session, and with 2 paragraphs of notes, maybe 3, you should be able to build it out on the fly. And maybe not. Maybe that's daunting for you. But once you get that experience, it's going to become easier and easier for you to just start layering details on top of each other. And as long as you're keeping in mind that the job of a 5-room dungeon is to be a structure, and you're keeping in mind that the job of a hexcrawl is to gamify discovery, and you're keeping in mind that the job of a random encounter is to see the world, slowly these principles will start running the game for you, and it'll become exponentially easier. And that's without me mentioning the fact that there are loads of tools on your disposal. Things like random search tables, random magic tables, random encounter tables, random weather tables. All of these things will make it so that it's easier for you to run the game. And you can just sort of roll on tables and let the results inspire you. Run inspiring encounters, inspiring table. Remember a video on that. And you build that on top, and you get to this point where it starts to become easier and easier for you to just look at data that's being fed to you by random tables or whatever. And then you can take that and run with it. Now this example is fairly simple. I literally just sat down with no plan, and I built it in, I don't know, 20 minutes. Obviously, I'm going to tell you that this process is easy and it takes no time at all. This is my world map, right? This here is Loggers County. It's this big forested blob, and it's just got a bunch of trees in it. And now my players have to stop watching because here it is in detail as a hex map. You can see that all the towns are same here around, right? It's the same sort of area. And I literally took my world map, I put it into Photoshop, and then I made smaller hexes. Here, each hex is 24 miles. Here, the hexes are 3 miles. And I filled this place up with all kinds of dungeons and rivers, swamps, forest, mountains, and there are loads of factions in here, and I spent ages on this, and I'm not done. I'm going to keep working on it, and I'm going to keep changing it. And, you know, I got a little key up here, and this is what I run in the middle of a dungeon. You can also see I had a little number in each hex. I went to a website that generated this, and you could just ask it to put numbers in each hex. So that way, when the players go, what hex are we entering? I can say 2720, and they go, oh, 2720. What kind of hex is that? And I say forested, and they say, what are the adjacent hexes? And I say, they're all forests. And they say, okay, we're going to head to 2820. And I go, oh, in 2820, when you enter it, you can see to the south, 1 league south, there is an old quarry. You know what I mean? So these things all sort of build out into creating this massive map. And this is a part of the beauty of hex maps. You can make them any scale, any size. You can make the hexes be 3 miles, like I suggest you do, or 24 miles for your world. Or you can, you know, change that up if you want. If you have very strong opinions and I haven't persuaded you already, then that's fine. But you can layer these things on and eventually build a map that sort of helps you run the game. It's a little guideline. It's your own little adventure module. You can open up and go, where in the map are they? What should they be able to see? And then you can use the map to inform your random encounters. For instance, in my random encounter table, getting a 9, which is the median result or the average result, they encounter the local faction, whatever that means. So that is what the faction map is for, is I can see, oh, they got a 9, but they're in this blue area, that means they're dealing with the Starkhelm clan. Or they're in the yellow area, that means they're dealing with a Skull Sword tribe. Build them up, make your life easier, and create your own guides. Prep DM, helping running DM, right? Prep DM made the map, running DM is just using it to try and figure out what makes sense in the moment. And that's where we'll pick it up next time. Thanks so much for watching this video. This channel is run by me and my girlfriend, and if you want to pick up our hexcrawl rules, they're available right now on the Patreon, along with the backlog with the class, the warlord class, and the firearm rules. Feeling especially generous, you might like the video, comment, share, subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified when we release new videos. Until next time, keep studying the mystic arts.